Hello?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah. So shall we start again?
Yes, sir, sure.
Yeah.
So, good afternoon, all. Now we are going to start the next session, that is the continuation of our earlier session being conducted by Dr. Ramakant Sharma, sir. So, with this, I again hand over the session to Ramakant, sir. Meanwhile, if you have any queries and questions, then you can use chat section specifically to post your queries and questions during the session. Like earlier session, we will cover it at the end of this session. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Is the screen visible?
Just a minute. Yes, sir, it is visible.
Yeah. 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 Just to keep it in continuity, what we have discussed in the previous session is like we have briefly discussed like what are the opportunities and the promising aspect available in the emerging photovoltaic technology, and how they are like superior in some sense or the other compared to silicon technology. Silicon was, we have seen that silicon is bulky, silicon is like fragile or brittle in a sense, so cannot be used for flexible application or stretchable application or lightweight application. And similarly, when we talk about the optical properties, silicon has some limitation. It has some fixed band gap, and it cannot be changed. So these are the problem associated with the silicons. And we have found that in the organic and dye-sensitized solar cell that to some extent this can be overcome by using this third generation technologies, particularly organic dye-sensitized perovskite and quantum dot solar cell. So we have already discussed about the organic part. Now we will be discussing just slightly briefly again for the dye-sensitized, and then we will go for the quantum dot and other technology. So dye-sensitized solar cell we have discussed last time, like there is a transparent conducting glass, then there is a blocking layer of TiO2 nanoparticles, then we have mesoporous titania, and then we have the organic dye. These organic dyes generally go and fill the pores of the TiO2 for the maximum loading. This is the photoanode, and on the photocathode side we have uh, like ITO or the FTO electrode, which is like deposited with the platinum over here, you can see. And then this is these two, photoanode and photocathode, or photoanode or counter electrode, gets connected using this sealant, and some electrolyte is in between them. So I have already discussed this light, like in the dye-sensitized solar cell. First of all, these dye molecules, because they have some visible absorption. TiO2 has a UV absorption, so it will not absorb the UV part. It will absorb only UV part, but visible part or the IR part is remain transparent to the TiO2, and therefore the light can enter from this part and go up to the TiO2. In the TiO2, they will absorb the photon, gets into the excited state. In the excited state, again, they will donate their electron to the TiO2 and becomes trying to become neutral. If they have donated electron, they should also get electron. That electron they are getting from this iodide to triiodide conversion, and the electron which was with TiO2 through outer external circuit load go up to counter electrode, and at the counter electrode this electron is getting absorbed by the triiodide, and again it is getting converted to the iodide. And this is the schematic which shows how dye-synthesized solar cell is. And then we have discussed some key aspects, like how to improve the efficiency of the uh, like dye-sensitized solar cell. Particularly, we can control the timeline of the dioxidization. We can improve the porosity or make it more and more porous. The compact layer of the TiO2 has to be used on the glass plate, just to avoid the direct contact between the dye and the just to avoid the direct contact between the electrolyte and the electrode on the other side. Similarly, we have discussed about the co-sensitization. And the co-sensitization, we have discussed like there are 3-4 types of dyes which can be used and used for harvesting different part of the spectra. And in the case of materials, we have the opportunity, instead of spheres of TiO2 nanoparticle, we can use nanotubes or nanowires. On the other side, like counter electrode, we can use graphene or carbon based other substances instead of platinum electrode. Similarly, for the electrolyte, instead of liquid electrolyte, we can use other two types of electrolyte like gel electrolyte or quasi-solid electrolytes. And we can use some other type of systems, like we can anneal the things, we can change the solvents, all those things. Now we will go for the perovskite and the quantum dot types of solar cell, how they are and what they exactly are supposed to do. So in the case of organic solar cell, the light harvesting function is carried out by the donor molecule. In the non-fullerene nowadays, there are non-fullerene molecules are also absorbing the light. So by the whole purpose of absorbing light is like the more the light is harvested, the more current will be available. So in the case of dye-sensitized solar cell, dye has a limited absorption window. In the case of organic, organic has a limited absorption window. But in the case of perovskite and the quantum dot, this screen shows that you have the opportunity to harvest the maximum part of the solar spectrum. Like right from the deep violet to the deep red, you can harvest. And just what we have to do is just change the composition of the like perovskite molecules, like we can change the ratio of chloride to bromide, we can change the bromide to iodide. Just like by changing the halide part of this perovskite, we can change the absorption spectrum of this particular quantum dots. So when we talk about the perovskite solar cell, the schematic representation is more or less similar to dye-sensitized solar cell. How it is different, I will tell you. We again have the FT or the ITO electrode. We have a blocking layer of TiO2. That is, blocking layer, it is very thin, but it is very compact. And then we have the mesoporous TiO2. So these are like small spherical balls of small surface holes on those. And in those particular mesoporous structure, after that we spin coat the perovskites. So what perovskite is actually, as we have seen in the previous case, in the perovskite we have the large library of materials nowadays. Instead of cesium, lead, iodide, cesium, lead, chloride, we can have methyl ammonium lead iodide, we have methyl lead tin iodide, all those combinations, mixed halide, formanium ion is also used instead of methyl ammonium. So I think we have a lot of compositions available. So those, any of the perovskite we can spin coat, and then we have to do annealing, and then we have to deposit the spiro. Spiro is basically a whole transporting material followed by the gold. So if you look at this working wise, it looks like an organic solar cell. Like we have electrode, cathode injection layer or anode induction layer, something called as absorbing material, then whole transporting layer, and then we have the anode, something like that. But working wise, if you will look, it is more or less working in a similar way like a dye-sensitized solar cell. And we can see that in the latter slide for the, when we look about the measurement part. So this is the perovskites, how perovskites can be spin coated. We have a spin coater over here which is connected to the vacuum. So when we put the substrate with the help of vacuum, it is getting hold on the particular chuck or the mounting position, and then when we allow, it rotates. So when we are putting the solvent, it is just like that solvent is getting spread. Because of van der Waals force, that particular solvent or the molecules are getting attached on the surface. And when we have deposited the film, we have to anneal it or do some temperature processing. Why? Because this temperature processing is useful to remove the excess solvent available in the film. But at the same time, some experiments suggest that we have to add some mixture of solvent. Why mixture of solvents are important? Because this mixture of solvents are useful in controlling the morphology part, which is very crucial. So when we have the 2-3 different type of solvent mixed together, one solvent will have a different evaporation rate, another solvent will have a different evaporation rate. So there is a competition between these 2-3 solvents, like which and based on that the final morphology of the film will be assembled. Now let us see the quantum dot sensitized solar cell. So just now what we have seen is like instead of dye we can use perovskite. Similarly, instead of perovskites or instead of dyes, we can use the quantum dots. Now, why these quantum dots are useful and how they are changing the property, let us discuss. So in the quantum dots, you can see the figure at the bottom. We have the option of having the from deep violet to red. But how this is achieved? So basically, when we are talking the bulk solid, we see that there is a existence of conduction band and the valence band, as in the case of any semiconductor. But what happens when this particular size of the molecule is getting decreased and decreased and decreased further? We observe that there is something called as a quantum confinement effect. Now, what is the quantum confinement effect? Because the audience has students also which have not been familiar with the quantum physics, I will explain it in a briefly in such a way that quantum confinement effect can be understood in a way like when the size of the particle is comparable to the Bohr radius of that particular system. Now, Bohr radius is the distance between the proton, the distance between the electron and the hole, or the when they get excited. So when the size is getting reduced, that Bohr radius becomes comparable to the size of this particular system. And in that case, instead of like the band like energy levels, we have the discrete energy levels available. And these discrete energy levels, because of the confinement of the particle size to a certain extent, you will have the quantum confinement effect in one direction or two direction, in all the three direction, and based on that you can have the discretion of these energy levels. So in this case, you can see that when the particle size is high, the band gap is little bit more than the bulk, but it is still comparable. But when the size is decreasing, it is further increasing. So when the band gap is increasing, energy is increasing. Energy is increasing means we have the deep blue or blue, sky blue kind of emissions available. And for this system, we have this kind of emissions available. So just by tuning the, not even composition, just the size. For example, this image I have taken is from the cadmium selenide. So cadmium selenide, same material can give you different absorption and different emissions. So based on that, we can say that in the case of organics, in the case of dyes, we are just changing the donor and acceptor, or the two donor, two acceptors. In the case of dye, we have the co-sensitization by the different amount of dyes. But here, in the perovskite, we are changing composition. In the quantum dot, the things are even more easy. Instead of composition, we just have to same composition, but the size we have to reduce by using some capping agent or something to further change the size. And based on that, we can fabricate the quantum dot sensitized solar cell. How it is, let us see. So if you look at this particular diagram, the quantum dot sensitized solar cell looks more or less similar to what we have seen just now, dye sensitized solar cell. But instead of dye, we have a cadmium sulfide or cadmium selenide or any kind of quantum dot of which we are using. So the working mechanism is almost same. This light will come from the FTO side. It will reach, because TiO2 is a wide band gap material. Its band gap, it is around 3.3 electron volts. So all the electrons, all the photons having the energy less than 3.3 electron volt will become transparent and will go to the cadmium sulfide or cadmium selenide structures. And then based on that, those will absorb the photon. Valence electron from the valence band will go to the conduction band. And in the conduction band, they will inject the electron to the TiO2. This TiO2 electron will go from FTO, go through the load available at the FTO. And again, there is some kind of redox reaction. Here it is a sulfide as a sulfate. Sulfates are used as a electrolyte. In the case of dye sensitized solar cell, we are using iodides over there. So these are the two different types of dye sensitized and quantum dot sensitized solar cell we have seen. Now, in the case of dye sensitized solar cell, because dye is a liquid, it can be easily absorbed on the surface of TiO2, but not in the case of quantum dot sensitized solar cell. In the case of quantum dot sensitized solar cell, we have the different strategies which we can use to absorb the quantum dot on the surface of TiO2. How it is, let us see. So the first and the foremost simple method is like the drop cast. You can have in a small amount of vial, some amount of quantum dot dispersed in some solvent and just dropping it onto the film, allowing the solvent to evaporate for some time, and then you will find that quantum dots have covered the underneath the TiO2 layer. Second thing is, instead of drop casting, you can spin coat the thing. You can have again the same solvent, you put it on the substrate and then allow it to rotate. What is the difference between the drop cast and the spin cast? Drop cast gives me ununiform thickness relatively compared to spin coating. Spin coating allows me to get the uniform thickness. Then the second is called as a chemical bath. Chemical bath, in this case, we are allowing this particular quantum dots of particular concentration in one vial or in one beaker and dipping our film of TiO2 nanoparticle inside the particular beaker or the vial where we have taken the quantum dots. So by this method, what is happening? We are just allowing our film to take a bath into the available chemicals. So this technique is called as a chemical bath. Because of the van der Waals force or because of the surface of the ligand, or we have the some kind of other forces available which allows the quantum dot to get attached to the TiO2 films which we have deposited. Then we have the technology called as a CELAR. This is very, very important. Most commonly, this is the technique we are using. This is called as a sequential ion layer absorption and removal. So ion and absorption and removal, this word itself means something is clear. Suppose for example, I want to deposit cadmium sulfide or cadmium selenide. So what will have? I will take a precursor of cadmium, for example, cadmium nitrate, cadmium chloride, cadmium hydroxide or something. And similarly, we have sulfur. So we take elemental sulfur in some solvent, or we take elemental selenium in some solvent, or some precursor of aluminum, selenium chloride or sulfur chloride, all those things. And then we can have these two solvents available over here in the two different beakers. So this ITO coated substrate with TiO2, it is getting immersed into the cadmium sulfate. Because cadmiums are ion, they are getting absorbed in the TiO2. We will remove from there. We will put into the sulfur or the selenium part chemicals bath. And after this one process, we will wash the excess material available, dry the film, and the process is repeated multiple times till we achieve the desired thickness. So you can see that previously there was no red color, but after multiple times of cadmium sulfide or cadmium selenide deposition, we have this cadmium this TiO2 coated with cadmium selenide or calcium sulfide. We can have another method called the electrophoretic deposition. Because this is already ITO coated with the TiO2, it has some conductivity. So we can use it as one electrode. We can have some particular precursor of cadmium and sulfur in the solvent and allow them to get deposited by using the typical our electro deposition techniques, just like we have studied in the high school, deposition of gold, deposition of silver on the counter electrode. So like that, some selective ions will go. First of all, I will keep the polarity positive here. Cadmium ions will move. After some time, I will put the negative polarity, some sulfur ions will move. So alternatively, I will change the polarity of this electro deposition and I will get the desired thickness. Then there is one more called as a molecular linker technique. So when we are depositing the TiO2, we will choose some kind of material for capping the TiO2 nanoparticle in such a way that one end of the TiO2 nanoparticle is available to get connected to the CDSC nanoparticle. So this CDSC nanoparticle, again, as I have told you, we have to control the size. To control the size means to control the absorption. And when we are controlling the size, how this particular material will not go after certain, how this particular material will not grow above a certain size is because we are capping it with some agent which is allowing or which is restricting its growth actually. So in this particular case, I have a particular quantum dot, I have some particular linker or some particular ligand capping the particular quantum dot and having the one end available to get linked to the TiO2 which has the opposite link. So these two gets will get linked properly, and then again I have the TiO2 standing on the, sorry, cadmium sulfide or the quantum dot standing on the TiO2. So in the case of dye, we can just spin coat or we can just soak the dye into the TiO2 for a long time. But in the quantum dot sensitized solar cell, we have seen that lot of options are available. You can spin coat, you can drop cast, you can do chemical bath, you can use Sylar technique, you can use electrophotonic deposition, or you can use molecular link technique to deposit quantum dot on this particular system. Now, what are the ways to improve the efficiency for the quantum dot sensitized solar cell? So first part is like quantum dot sensitizer itself. High conduction band potential and wide absorption range is available. So as I have told you, we can use the same material of different size. Suppose I have a cadmium sulfide of 5 nanometer, 3 nanometer, 2 nanometer. They are absorbing in the different wavelength region. I will mix them together. I will spin coat, I will deposit, and that way I can harvest the whole spectrum. Second thing is like high catalytic activity, high conductivity. High conductivity means these are the inorganic nanoparticles. So in the organic one, we have seen that the mobility is the issue, but in the inorganic, the mobility of the electron is very good. So when I'm talking about the mobility, these all organic compared to organic part, this quantum dot sensitized solar cell have the very good mobility and therefore can be used. Excellent collision resistance is one of the important property. Now, most of the people in the PhD at your institute who have done the synthesis of quantum dots or some other nanoparticles, they might have seen that any reaction which has the water as a solvent is very good for controlling the reaction actually. So most of the nanoparticles, people prefer water or ethanol as a solvent. However, when we synthesize the quantum dot using the water as a solvent and use them for quantum dot sensitized solar cell, we found that they are undergoing a process called the photocorrosion. So when the light is falling on this quantum dot, it has some water synthesis background or history, and it is getting interacted with the sulfide electrolyte. So basically that process is creating corrosion on the surface. So therefore, to avoid the photocorrosion, it is recommended to use the non-polar solvents like hexene or toluene or xylene. These type of solvents are good and found to be efficient when we are trying to improve the corrosion aspect. Quantum dot deposition. One thing we need is like compared to for any solar cell, we need light harvesting material to be in the maximum capacity. So from that point of view, this loading of TiO2, loading of quantum dot is extremely important. The more quantum dots are available, the more light will be harvested and more current will be generated. And shortening the loading time. Shortening the loading time means, for example, I have discussed in the previous technique, if we use Sylar technique, one process will be completed, then second process. So this gap between the processes creates some kind of what I can say surface defects available on this particular quantum dots of the molecules under synthesis, and that way it creates a problem for the charge transfer, and therefore we can say that at that point there is a charge trap, or the electrons are getting blocked at that particular point, trapped at that particular point, and that is not good for my solar cell performance. So if I have some techniques called as a spin coating or electrophoretic deposition, then it is very good because it will reduce the shortening deposition time. Interfacial passivation. As I have told you, quantum dot, we have to control the size, and for controlling the size, we use some kind of ligand molecule or the covering molecule. These covering molecules or the ligand molecules are generally what you can say organic molecules, and therefore between the two quantum dot, here is the organic molecule, here is the organic molecule. So the charge conduction is not uniform from one molecule to another molecule, because there is a in between the capping molecule. These capping molecules are generally sometimes called as a mercaptopropionic acid, or you can say pyridine. These are the molecules people use as for capping. They have 5-6 double single bond arrangement of the carbon, and which is not good for charge conduction. So therefore it is said that retarding surface charge recombination is important. For that, we have to choose the material carefully for interfacial passivation. The shorter the carbon chain, efficient the molecule will be. Redox electrolyte, just like in the case of dye, same is the issue over here in the redox electrolyte. The sulfide electrolyte, which is very commonly used, but still it has some issues, like the solvent for dissolving that electrolyte has some issues. The ionic mobility, if they are not correct in compatibility with the electron mobility throughout the circuit, then that could be a problem. And similarly over here, like when we talk about the photoanode field, we need improving quantum dot loading amount, enhancing the light scattering, accelerating the electron transmission, etc. So basically in the quantum dots, again, we have some challenges associated to control the efficiency, and that is why the quantum dot sensitized solar cell or dye-sensitized solar cell are almost stagnant in terms of efficiency. They are giving around 10, 12, 13, 14 efficiency, not more than that. And therefore, very few people nowadays are working on this area. So let me summarize what we have discussed is like perovskite, organic or dye-sensitized solar cell and quantum dot sensitized solar cell, and there are some issues associated with all of them. Most common I have highlighted over here. One and the foremost is the stability of the devices. These devices are not that stable, like couple of hours, few days, or maybe in some cases 6 months is enough. After that, these devices are not showing good performance or the same performance as before. Second issue is the area. These devices have relatively the small area. For example, when I talk about the silicon, we have the area in the meter square, but in these devices, the best area may have the area in centimeter square or 100 centimeter square at max, not more than that. So that way, whatever performance we are getting, suppose I am getting 15% efficiency, but when I will scale up the device area, I will find that that 15% will reduce to 12. So the number looks exciting right now, but when we talk about the area, these areas are not very good to have the large scale application. Third one is very important, use of toxic and carcinogenic solvents. I told you that all these technologies are like solution processable. And for solution processable devices, we use solvent. So the most common solvent which we use in the organic solar cell or the perovskite solar cell are like chlorobenzene, dichlorobenzene, trimethylbenzene, or sometimes chloroform, sometimes xylene, toluene. All of these compounds are basically carcinogenic. They are harmful to the universe or nature. And similarly, in the perovskite, we use DMSO, dimethyl sulfoxide. We use DMF, dimethyl something, all those solvents. So basically, these solvents are actually so much problematic. Like for example, when I talk about, okay, I am having the printable solar cell. So for printable, we have very big machineries and everything is getting fabricated in the open air. Now, how can a person work in the atmosphere where such a large amount of solvents are using, or basically those are toxic and carcinogenic? So that is also one of the problem for scaling it up further. Fourth one is the dispersion of quantum dot in organic solvent. So for the quantum dot sensitized solar cell, we need the quantum dot in the form of solution. So for quantum dot to be in the form of solution, we have to dissolve or disperse that in particular some solvent. Now generally it so happens like quantum dot being a molecule in a different way, 1, 2, 3, 4, they are having some kind of cap. Cap means basically it has some kind of bond at the surface which are actually repulsive in each other. So one molecule and another molecule is getting basically repulse of each other, and because of repulsion, they are throughout the vial or throughout the beaker, they are uniformly dispersed. But what happens over the period of time, this capping layer interacts with solvent, and over the period of time, it gets dilute, and finally the surface of that capping removes, and then these two quantum dot molecules or three quantum dot molecules starts combining each other and form agglomeration. This agglomeration is basically changing the size of the quantum dot, and when the size of the quantum dot changes, it changes the absorption. So that is why this dispersion of quantum dot is also one of the critical issue. Fourth one is the, fifth one is the requirement of the glove box. Now glove box means basically it is not necessary you need glove box. What I want to say is we need controlled atmosphere of nitrogen and argon. Why? Because these are actually reactive molecule, reactive to oxygen as well as moisture and the light. So when the light is available and some amount of moisture or oxygen is available, they undergo photodegradation. So to avoid the photodegradation, I should fabricate these devices into the nitrogen and argon atmosphere so that these particular devices will not have some amount of moisture or water vapor available in the atmosphere or the oxygen available in the atmosphere. Then most of the devices you have seen, like there are 5, 6 layers, 8 layers, 7 layers, 5 layers deposited after each other. Now, if we deposit one layer after another with the solvents of same type, possibility is that when I'm depositing the second layer, the first layer will get wiped out. So to overcome that, what I should have is the solvent which are orthogonal in nature. For example, I have the water and kerosene. They don't mix each other. So if I'm spin coating one layer by using water as a solvent, next layer I can deposit by using kerosene as a solvent. And again on the kerosene, I can use water as a solvent. I'm just giving example. Water is not good for our systems. This is just for understanding, because most of you might not have worked with the chlorobenzene and other solvent. I'm just giving some examples. Then there is one more thing called as a defect in the films or the non-uniformity in the films. In the previous session when I was discussing, some of you have asked the question like, what about the uniformity in the film when we are depositing with the solution? So of course these films are not uniform in large area aspect, but small area they are respectively uniform. But the more challenging problem with related to films is the defects available in the film. So what are the defects available in the film? When I am depositing the quantum dots, when I am having these particular organic molecules on the surface of this, suppose this is a sphere. Now to sphere, to me it looks like a ball or any kind of spherical surface, but when it is the arrangement of quantum dots, some quantum dots have to arrange themselves in such a way that there is a discontinuity between two quantum dots. So those particular places are called as a defects. And then defects are not good for the charge transport. They act as a trap sites. And last, even if we talk everything about these devices, like they are okay, scalable solution, processable and other things, we have to remember two things, like both the electrodes, top and the bottom electrode, are as of right now most preferentially deposited using the vacuum technique. So that is one of the critical aspects we should always keep in mind. And the second thing is like when we talk about the ITO, it has the indium. When we talk about the FTO, it has a fluorine. Fluorine is not good for health. Indium is rare earth element. So again, it will be a problem in the long run. So these are the issues. So now I will be going for the some characterization part, some basic characterization associated with these devices. So that we can cover it in a time. So in the previous part, you have told me like what is solar spectrum and why this material has to be absorbed in some particular wavelength and not. So here is the solar spectrum I have shown you for your consideration. You can see like most of the part of this solar spectrum is in the visible region, that is between 380 to 780 nanometer. At that time, there is a maximum intensity available for the absorption from the sun. After 780 up to 2500 nanometer, there is some amount of intensity available, but with respect to visible, it is less. And below that, there is not much amount. So that is what we have observed. In the solar spectrum, we know that the UV component is very, very less. That is around 2%. Visible component is more. Maximum, I can say 47%. And then IR is 51%. So when we are talking about the solar cells right now, organic or basically dye or basically perovskite, most of them are harvesting in this region, that is between 300 to 700, 380 to 780. Why? Because at that time we have the maximum available spectrum from the sun. Let me go to the next slide now. Now, when I talked about the previous slide, I have told you that we have to do the measurement at AM 1.5. Now, what is AM 1.5? Let us try to understand first. So basically, suppose I am standing on any part of the earth and I am assuming that the sun is exactly in the straight line with me. Now what will happen at that situation when the sun is exactly at that overhead of me or exactly at the zenith at me? I can say that the sun will emit the radiation, it will come to the outer layer of the atmosphere without passing through the air because there is no atmosphere. And the moment where it touches the surface of the atmosphere, that is called as a AM0, air mass zero, means till now the light has not at all traveled through the air. In the second part, light will go from the surface of atmosphere to the surface of the earth. So it has to travel 1 atmosphere of air mass. So therefore we called it as a AM 1.0. But the measurement condition which we are generally using is AM 1.5. Now what is AM 1.5? Now it so happens like suppose you are here and the basically earth is revolving, but to understand we say suppose sun is revolving and it goes to some other position. So when it is at this suppose 48.2 degree angle, it is making some kind of angle with the zenith position ideally. Now what happens? The light in the case of AM10, it has traveled from here to here. But in the case of AM 1.5, this is a slanted distance or the tilted distance. So when I have this vertical line and when I have this horizontal line, of course trigonometry starts applying. And when the trigonometry is applying, I can say that if suppose this is the angle called as the theta z, then I can say that this is adjacent upon hypotenuse. Adjacent upon hypotenuse is some like cos theta, and I have to take opposite of that. So it is a sec theta here basically. So AM of any particular position is the sec of that particular angle from the assuming that sun is at the zenith at that angle. So if I am standing here, suppose somebody asks me what is that 90 degree? 90 degrees sec 90 is infinity. I cannot define that situation. But for any other angle, I can have some particular value and I can note down over here. So this is the importance of AM 1.5. Now there may some question arises, okay, why we are not taking AM 1.0? Because sun will not be always at our overhead. It is having a journey from this particular sunrise to sunset. It goes throughout the different angles from the person's position. So when it is going at different angle, we are taking the maximum span from 48.2 to 48.2 this particular region. At that time the sunrise is maximum harvestable and we want to cover. So average of this distance we have taken from that point of view. It is, or you can say that on the equator the position is different, on the pole the position is different. So from that point of view also average distance comes at around 48 or 50 something latitude. This had been standardized from the American point of view, not Indian point of view. But it makes sense for all the tropical country, because if you look at the globe, most of the tropical countries are available in the upper tropic of Cancer rather than tropic of Capricorn. Now this is all about the measurement part. Now I will tell you, like whenever we are having some solar cell and we are measuring it, some people say that okay, I don't have the facility, how should I measure my devices, and how I will get the information about whether my device is good or bad. For that, I will tell that the first and the foremost measurement which anyone should do is the dark IV or the dark JV characteristics. How it will be helpful to understand? Let us try to see it. Here I have shown the 4 images of dark IV from different papers. The papers have been quoted at the bottom, and I will show you what exactly is happening. So when I am saying that this is 95, 75, 60, 40, 10, these are like the different weight percent of acceptor into the donor. When I am taking in the solar cell, we are using donor and acceptor of different weight percent in the different ratios so that the mobilities get balanced, so that there is enough photon harvesting. I have used over here different weight percent of acceptor and I have checked their dark IV. I see that there is very less change even if for the different composition. Similarly, when I am using the regio-regular or defect-free molecules and I am comparing their performance, I can see that there is a change in the dark IV. You can see these are the open square are the dark IV. The knee voltage is changing. For all of you might have studied the semiconductor, and what is knee voltage, you know, from where it starts showing the diode behavior, not linear behavior. So if you make the molecule change in such a way that there is no defect, it shows different dark current, and if for the molecule which has some defect, it has some different dark current. Similarly, suppose I am arranging the molecule or depositing molecule in such a way that molecules are arranged in a different way. In the upper film, I can say that the molecules are randomly oriented. In the bottom film, they are perpendicular or properly oriented in such a way that that makes some sense. For the performance of both these devices, I can see that in the dark IV, the behavior is different. So what I want to say here, if suppose you are making solar cell or you are fabricating any devices and trying to see whatever you are trying to do has done some effect or not, it can have some signature in the dark IV. Just by noticing the dark IV, you can say, okay, I have changed the interlayer, therefore the dark IV is different, or I have changed something, so dark IV is different. Similarly, I have given one more example. In the organic solar cell, to achieve the bulk heterojunction, we are adding the additive. So just by changing the amount of additive, we are controlling the phase segregation within the donor and acceptor. And when the phase segregation is getting changed, of course, its performance is getting seen on the dark IV. For all the same active layer, different weight percent of additive gives me different pinch off voltage or the knee voltage. Similarly, suppose I have deposited some film. One is the dark IV shown over here, and above that I have deposited some kind of suppose same film I have done some annealing at 120 degree for 2 minutes. In this case, see the nature of the dark IV has changed completely. So what I want to say, this dark current reduces in these situations. In this situation, the dark current is basically reducing and it is changing the behavior. So what I can say that from this measurement, we can confirm that dark IV is the heart of any measurement of solar cell, and it replicates your experimental strategy, like what you have done and whether it has really affected your performance or not. Let us go for the other characterizations now. For any JV curve, JV curves I have already shown you. Here also you can see, suppose this is one JV curve. This dark blue is always for the ideal condition. Now I have taken the series resistance. I have changed the series resistance. Now what exactly, first of all, the series resistance is? So basically, when I am talking about the JV curve, we have the current on the y-axis and voltage on the x-axis. And it looks like a some kind of arc kind of thing over here as a dark JV, or sorry, at a like a JV curve. Now what we see, it is completely parallel to the voltage axis up to certain point, and then it tried to become completely parallel to the current axis. So basically, it is ideally I should get a rectangle, but it is not possible. That no system is ideal in the universe. So therefore, I can have some kind of recombination or something, and I can have this kind of blue color kind of, in all the figures I have shown some blue color as an ideal solar cell. Then second thing I have shown is the cell with the series resistance changing. So in the first case, I have taken 0 as a series resistance. So when it is 0, both ideal solar cell and the solar cell with 0 resistance is showing the same curve. When I am taking series resistance as 1, it is slightly deviating from or ideal behavior. When I am taking series resistance as 2 or 5 or more than that, up to the order of 10, it is changing further. And when I am having the series resistance up to 20, which is very, very high, which should not be there, it almost, instead of curve, it looks me like a straight line. So basically what I want to say, again, the second thing is, like when you do the measurement of the JV curve, look at the nature of your JV curve. how exactly it is, whether it is not parallel at this part, like this is, now we are talking about series resistance. Series resistance, sorry, I forgot to tell you how to measure. Now, when we are talking slope, slope is what? Y-axis divided by x-axis for any particular thing. So in this case, current density is this, and this is x-axis voltage. So we have current divided by voltage. But what does the Ohm's law says? V is equal to IR. So R should be basically V divided by R. So if I want to take the resistance value out of this curve, I should take the inverse of the slope. So slope from this curve is current upon voltage. When I will take the inverse, it is voltage upon current. So when I will take the slope of this curve near VOC point, that is this near 0.6, I will get the values of series resistances. So in this case, when the series resistances are changing, I can see the nature is changing. So first thing, in the dark IV, you should find out whether there is a change in the performance. Then second change is, do the light IV. In the light IV, try to see whether there is a change in the series resistance or the shunt resistance. This part we are doing is about the series resistance, and it should replicate the change. Suppose this line is ideal, it is getting away from the ideal, it is getting away, it is giving still away. So this line near VOC, the vertical line near VOC is changing its inclination. That means the series resistance of your devices are very high. Now let's go for the next case. Shunt resistance. In the case of shunt resistance, it should be very, very high ideally. And if it is less, then my performance is decreasing or deteriorating. In the first part, I have shown like the series resistance is very, very high, or 1000 ohm centimeter square. So in that situation, it is completely like ideal behavior. And when I have decreased from 1000 to 10, you can see its performance. It has moved away from the parallel line of the VOC. Suppose this is the voltage line, it has become opposite to, slightly away from the voltage axis. In the case of this, when the series shunt resistance is 1 ohm, it has further moved away. And in the case of last, when there is a shunt resistance is 0, it has become almost like a straight line again, and makes no sense for me. So what I want to do from this measurement, or what I want to say from this measurement, is like series and shunt resistances are very important. And when we are doing JV characteristics after dark JV, the second most important thing is to check whether series and shunt resistance are different, or whether they are getting change or not. Third important thing is fill factor. Now to get the device performance in a very efficient way, I will go back to that slide again, 1 minute. This is what I have told you about the fill factor. That fill factor is very important, and fill factor is the maximum extractable voltage from the given solar cell. So if this part is becoming ideal rectangle, the fill factor is nearly 100, or you can say 100% of 1. But ideally it is not, it is around 80 or 0.8 or something like that. So to get that value, we should have the very, very low series resistance and very, very high series shunt resistance. In that situation only, my performance of solar cell will be very good. Now let us go for the second characterization, called as a quantum efficiency. Now there are two types of quantum efficiency, and sometimes it becomes confusing for us to understand which quantum efficiency are we really talking about. So most of you have studied the basic physics in the class 11th and 12th, and you might have learned something called as, there are basically three processes happening simultaneously with the light. One is transmittance, second one is reflection, and third one is absorption. So when I am looking at any light and it is passing through some material, these three processes are simultaneously happening. Suppose for example glass. So some amount of light may be getting reflected from the glass, some amount of light will transmit, some amount of light will be absorbed. In solar cell, I want the light to be absorbed. That is my primary requirement. So the absorption is maximum, but still there is some kind of reflection and some kind of transmittance available because of the materials which we are using here. So I want to say, first of all, what is external quantum efficiency? And then I will tell about something called as the internal quantum efficiency. So external quantum efficiency, just look at this line. It is defined as the ratio of number of charge carrier collected by the solar cell to the number of photons of a given energy shining on the solar cell from outside. So in the solar cell measurement, when we are doing JV curves measurement, we are putting the white light falling on the solar cell, and because of the white light, we can say that all the wavelengths are falling on the solar cell and I am getting some particular efficiency. But in the case of quantum dot, it is but it is the case of quantum efficiency, it is not the situation. In the case of quantum efficiency, what we have is basically we have the light of fixed wavelength falling on the substrate or falling on the device. For example, you can take a wavelength of 550 nanometer or 530 nanometer green wavelength or yellow wavelength, something like that. It is falling on the device. When it is falling on the device, ideally this is the light. So some part of light will be transmitted, some is absorbed, some is reflected. And when the light is absorbed, ideally it should create the electron and hole pair, which can be collected at the electrode, right? So when I'm talking about the external quantum efficiency, what I have said that it is the number of charge carrier collected. Suppose 2 photons are falling on the surface and 200 electron and hole pairs are generating. So it is 200 divided by 2. So I'm getting 100 as a quantum efficiency. So it is the number of charge carriers collected to the number of photons falling. But there is one more thing called the internal quantum efficiency. Internal quantum efficiency is exactly same definition as it is, plus one more line, are absorbed by the cell. Now what do you mean by are absorbed by the cell? The light which is falling on the solar cell, it may get transmitted or it may get reflected also. So in that situation, suppose 100 photons are falling, out of that 2 are transmitted, 2 are reflected. So actually basically solar cell is absorbing 96 photon. So with respect to 96 photon, now how much is getting generated? So denominator is the number of photons. So in the first case, the number of photons falling on the solar cell 100. So 200 divided by 100, quantum efficiency is 2. But in the second case, 200 divided by not 100 but 96, because 4 photons have already been lost. So if they are lost, my quantum efficiency will be more because it is only with respect to the absorbed photons. So whenever somebody gives you the data of 2 quantum efficiency and asks you which one is the internal and which one is the external, even if you have not performed the measurement, even if you have not done anything, just by looking at the number, you can find out, okay, this is the external because it is less, this is the internal because it is more. Why we do quantum efficiency and what exactly it means? It is basically an electrical efficiency of a solar cell, because what is the maximum amount of current available and what is the maximum amount of current I have extracted, that is the ratio called as electrical efficiency. Same thing, it is a kind of fill factor in terms of electrical efficiency, you can say. And second thing is like, is JV measurement and quantum efficiency related to each other? Yes, they are related to each other. How? Suppose you have done the integration of this quantum efficiency over the whole solar spectrum. Solar spectrum I have just now shown you in this slide. So this is the solar spectrum I have the values of photon flux at all the points of the solar spectrum. So if I do the integration at that particular point using this, I will find that just by using the external quantum efficiency, after integration over the whole electromagnetic solar spectrum, I can find out my current density of the solar cell. So this current density of the EQE and current density of solar cell, they should be ideally 5% plus minus to each other. suppose I am getting 10% from the so suppose I am getting 10 milliampere per centimeter square from the JV measurement, maximum I should get is 9.95, or on this side 10.05 as a current, because it should be plus minus 5%. Let's go to the next measurement. This is the quantum efficiency I have told. Look at the nature of the quantum efficiency. This is some quantum efficiency of some solar cell with different weight percent of some molecule or something. Forget about that part. But look at the nature of the quantum efficiency. It looks like something is increasing, decreasing, and something like that. So now I want to tell you something again, is like this quantum efficiency is basically something related to the number of photons falling on the cell or getting absorbed by the solar cell. So it has related something to the absorption of the solar cell. So when you look at the quantum efficiency, the nature of the quantum efficiency or the spectra of the quantum efficiency is in such a way that this nature is always more or less similar to what you have in the absorption of any particular material. Suppose you have been given with some kind of dye, you take the UV vis absorption of that dye, you will get some spectra. Compare that spectra with the dye sensitized solar cell and you will see that they are having some kind of similarity between each other. So because quantum efficiency, it strongly depends on the absorption properties of the particular solar cell, and absorption property in that solar cell depends on the absorption of material. The absorption of material and the quantum efficiency spectra are almost similar in nature. And then this is the last measurement I will be discussing with you for today, and then we will have the question answers. So this is the intensity dependent JV. So I have told you that I will be discussing only those measurements which will be easily available at the MNIT Jaipur, so that by doing those measurements you can get the first hand of information about your devices. So when you are working on solar cell, the two instruments you should always have under your custody is like JV measurement and the quantum efficiency measurement. We have already discussed from JV, we can do the dark JV, we can do the light JV. From the light JV, we can compare the series and shunt resistance. That gives us some information whether the device is showing good performance or not. And then we have seen about the quantum efficiency. Now this is the last part, intensity dependent JV. In the intensity dependent JV, you can say that when I have done the measurement of the IV curve, when I have taken the IV curve of a solar cell, what I have done at that time was I have used 100 as a intensity falling on the sun, falling on the devices from the solar simulator. So 100 milliwatt per centimeter square or 1000 watt per meter square, these are the standard illumination intensity which we consider. So you see that when we are having the different kind of filters available commercially. So when between the device and between the light source, this is the light, this is the device, when between these if I keep some filters, it changes the intensity. So when I am decreasing the intensity from 100 to 10 to 1 or something like that, these are the values of VOC plotted. So this is the log scale and this is the VOC. Similarly, I am plotting same thing, because when we are doing JV, we are getting JSC and VOC value. So these are the VOC values I have plotted. Similarly, I have plotted JSC values, but in the log scale. And what these information, what they give me as a information, they give me very crucial information about the recombination happening within the solar cell. So even if you don't have any other measurement, try to see whether your devices have poor performance due to more recombination or whether your device has poor performance because of poor absorption. It can be understood over here. So this VOC basically depends on the light intensity, and the equation is delta VOC KT by E log of I plus constant. And similarly, JSC depends on the intensity, JSC is directly proportional to intensity to power to some exponent. So when we take the slope of this log JSC versus log of intensity curve, we will, because take log on both the side, it gives log of JSC is equal to alpha log of I. And when you will take log of JSC divided by log of I, you will get alpha. Log of JSC upon log of I means the slope of this curve, that is y2 upon x2, y2 minus y1 upon x2 minus x1. So I will get the slope. What this slope gives me information about, it gives me information about the recombination, whether it is a bimolecular or not. If the slope of this curve is 1, it implies the ideal bimolecular recombination. But as in the case of present situation, you can see that there is some devices without barium film and with barium film, and I found that when I am using 20%, 20 nanometer barium, it approaches to 1, and therefore I can say that the only recombination available in that device is bimolecular recombination. But without barium, I can see that there are some amount of trap assistant recombination also there. Similarly, for the VOC versus light intensity curve, I can say that it should be understood in the two region. One is between 100 to 1 wavelength, and then from below 1 wavelength region. So without barium, if I will plot it like this, it gives me some number 1.32. Then with 10 nanometer, 20 nanometer, 30 nanometer barium, it gives me 1.2, 1.1, 1 kT by E as a slope. And in the second situation, it goes below, it just changes the nature of the slope. In this situation, when I can say that slope of VOC versus light intensity is equal to kT by E, then it is called as a bimolecular recombination. When it is close to 2, it is like Shockley-Reed-Hall recombination, or called as a trap-assisted recombination. So in the present talk, what I have tried to show you, just like by using the dark JV, normal light JV, quantum efficiency and intensity dependent measurement, you can find out the enough information about your solar cell and plan your NAEC experiment. And based on the performance, you can go for the further characterization rather than just running for all the devices with all the characterization. So if you have any questions, I think you can ask, and I will just finish over here. And intentionally, I have not covered much part so that I can take more and more question and try to help you understand this field.
Thank you, Ramakant sir, for this wonderful talk. I'll just request all the participants, if you have any questions, then please mention those in the chat sections. Meanwhile, we have a few questions. So, yeah, there is one question from Mr. Pritam. So, please explain the molecular linkage technique and explain the counter deposition and QDS deposition, quantum dots.
Counter deposition?
Molecular linkage technique.
Yeah, and
you have covered this.
What is molecular link, and what is the second question?
Yeah, that is the counter deposition.
I think counter electrode is there, but I don't think so there is a counter deposition.
Okay, there is a question from, okay, just Mr. Pritam, if you are listening, please elaborate that question a bit so that it will be helpful for us to address that. So till that time, we will just move to next question, that is from
Yes.
Mr. Surajit Ghosh. So why meso layer thickness is lesser for quantum dot sensitized solar cells than DSSC, dye sensitized solar cells?
I have not read anything specific related to that, like mesoporous layer is thinner in the case of quantum dot compared to dye. But I think based on my experience, I think the answer somewhere must be lying in that way, like quantum dots, even if they are very small in size, they will never go into the mesoporous or the pores of the TiO2 nanoparticles. So it makes no sense whether you have small thickness or more thickness. That is one thing. And second thing is about, I think, the kinetics of the device. Maybe the time scale at which the dye is oxidizing or like exciting and de-exciting process, and the quantum dot exciting and de-exciting process, maybe the time scale or the kinetics of those two scales may be different. So that could be one of the reason. But I have not exclusively worked on those fields, so I am not sure that whether my answer fits, but still I will figure it out for future.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, can you please explain the photo degradation?
Photo degradation means actually there are two types of degradation, you can say. One is the intrinsic degradation of that material. Suppose, for example, what I can say, uh, I have some food, for example, which I have cooked 3 days, 4 days back, and it is it is like intrinsically degraded by their own, like we don't have to do anything. Some bacteria are generating, it is getting degraded or spoiled over the time. But suppose I have the some specific materials which are getting degraded under specific conditions, then that can be classified in this case as a photo degradation material. So because these are all materials working or employed in the solar cell, so that means one thing is obvious, like they have to be under the constant illumination from the sun or from any light source. So if the material constantly having the illumination, and in the surrounding illumination, surrounding to that molecule, there is some amount of moisture or water vapor available. So moisture or water vapor may not degrade that material, but in the presence of light, these three combination together becomes a deadly combination, and it will affect the degradation of performance, degrade the intrinsic property of the material. So photo degradation is only with the light, but it is not only phenomena observed in the case of solar cell. They have photo degradation as well as intrinsic degradation, both together.
Next question is, can you please explain the three colors of quantum efficiency graph for what they symbolize?
Actually, that is just from one of my previously published papers. So as I have told you, in the organic solar cell, we have the donor and the acceptor. So donor or acceptors, basically donor is absorbing some part of the light and the acceptor is absorbing some part of the light. So when I have fabricated this solar cell, let me give you some example here. Oh. So in this solar cell, basically I have used these three molecules: PTB7TH, PDTS, FBTTH by 2, and IESEO4.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir. The
Yes.
screen is not visible. You have shared different.
Wait. Stop share. I will share again. Wait. Is it visible now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is visible now.
Yeah. So this is one of my like recent papers where what we have done is like we have taken three molecules: PTB7TH, PDTS, FBTTH by 2, and IESEO4F, and we are mixing these three in a different weight percent and putting it as a ternary blend over here, and their energy levels are shown over here. So when I am talking in that figure, DTS amount, like in the one composition there is 0% of DTS, in the another composition 15%, in the third composition 25%. So by changing the composition, I found that in the 15% I can increase the absorption by certain value in certain region, and that found to be useful in my device, I think, on that. Yes.
So the next question is from Revati Ambekarji. So she has asked, what is bimolecular recombination and SRH recombination? So can you please repeat that or put light on it?
Yeah, just 1 minute. So basically, if I want to say the bimolecular recombination and monomolecular recombination, it is something like this. This is particularly a donor or the acceptor arranged in this way. Oh, wait, I will just show with the same figure, which I have opened just now. Yeah, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so when we have the donor and acceptor arranged in this way, electron will be, sorry, photon will be absorbed by the donor and some electron will go to the excited state, and we have this exciton and it goes up to exciton is getting dissociated at a certain point. And at this interface, we have a charge transfer state or the city state, which we called. Now, what is bimolecular recombination? That recombination is like charge is generating in one molecule and it is getting recombined in the another molecule. For example, it has gone from this to this level, it got transferred, but before getting collected, it get recombined to this energy level. It gets combined from higher excited state to lower excited state. It don't get collected at all. So I have some I have some recombination because of charge which is generated in some one system and getting recombined in the another system. While this first one is called as the monomolecular, the trap assisted recombination is like excitation is done in this particular case and getting recombined again in the same molecule without reaching to the interface. So these are basically, in the simplest way, I can tell about bimolecular and monomolecular recombination.
Mr. Satyam has asked how photocorrosion will occur. I guess you have answered
Yeah, I
that
think,
question.
yeah.
Uh, the next question from him is what are other light sources which are similar, which have similar characteristics of that of sunlight?
Uh, there is no specific thing, but it is just like a white light. White halogen lamp can be used, but generally in the most of the white halogen lamp also we have some limitation of the wavelength. So when we do measurement at certain wavelength, the lamp changes. So I think white halogen light will be having a more or less similar performance than what we can say like from sun.
Okay, just adding to that, the recent developments are like there are LED light sources also.
Yeah, white LED, white LED. White LED, white xenon lamp, any white combination will be enough.
So next question is from Mr. Avadhut Godbole. So he has asked, I think this is out of the area of our talk, but still, is there any effect of gamma radiations on the photovoltaic cells?
I think there are, because recently I have come across with some paper which are exclusively studying those kind of specifically radiation dependent study. Why? Because most of these solar cells, they are planning to use it in the space projects, because space project, one of the cost of the space project involves the installation of the solar cell, because at that particular case you cannot have the any other light source except the sun. So putting the sun with the putting the satellite with the solar cells from all sides is very essential. And if this particular technology which we are talking and discussing about, it has a lightweight, so it reduces the weight of the satellite with the source of energy, so it looks very promising. But it as of right now don't have very good efficiency, but some people does have done some experiments and it has been published with some 50-60 authors in collaboration with NASA. I have seen recently some paper, and what they have done is like they have used helium balloon, they have mounted some kind of perovskites or the organic solar cells on that, and taken that helium balloon to the certain height of the our atmosphere where there is a enough amount of radiation. After a certain time they came back and they measured again, and just to study the effect. So I think there are some studies available, but I don't know exactly whether it could be constructive effect or detrimental effect. I'm not sure about.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Mr. Gnanesh Nole. So he has asked, do we have any arrangement where the angle keeps changing to optimize the electricity generation while measuring the or characterizing the solar cells for JV measurements?
I didn't got the question, can you repeat?
Do we have any arrangement or is there any significance of measuring the what we can say, IJV characteristics with respect to changing angles.
I think we can do that. There is not a problem in that, but most of the solar cells actually are measured on the solar simulator. And these solar simulators are generally provided by the company with some calibrations actually. So if at all, if we try to change the position of the lamp, that will not be good. Second thing, we can change the position of our substrate or the device. Of course, but then in that situation, if the device is of large area, suppose I have these two devices, for example, one is mobile and one is this notebook. So when I am keeping slanted on them, the illumination is not having that much variation on this small area, but it will definitely have the inclination will have a very large difference when the light is falling. It is close, top part is close, bottom part is different. So in that situation, I will not have the uniform illumination, and therefore I cannot say that my measurements are correct or wrong. So I think there is arrangement, but it makes no sense to measure that type of devices.
Next question is from Mr. Satyam Ji. So he has asked, what are the other characterization techniques that are not taught in this presentation? Okay.
I think that is very like I can say innocent question, but what I have just discussed is just the tip of the iceberg. Like these are the most fundamental characterization you will see in any paper of solar cell, be it silicon, be it any type of technology. But depending on the type of application, for example, in the emerging photovoltaics, we are finding that efficiency is more or less depending on the morphology. So all the characterization associated with the morphological measurement, like you example structural morphology, or you have the AFM, XRD, you have this composition of the morphology by using XPS, and you can have the arrangement of purity of domain by using the SOX technique or GIVX techniques. So these are just structural techniques. Then we have the different kind of electrical techniques, TPV, TPC, electrochemical impedance spectroscopy, just to see about the recombination part, how it is happening within the device. So basically, if you will see, there are a lot of devices, but all those characterizations can be classified into three main categories. One is optical characterization, which talks about the optical properties of the material used in the device. Second one is the electrical characterization, and third one is the morphological or structural characterization. There is no other characterization we are doing except this. So whether I have to do the optical properties, like my material is absorbing good or not, I am changing some composition, whether still it is efficient or not. So UV spectroscopy, PL spectroscopy, all those things can be done. Then we have some other light-based techniques for other types of measurements. So I think I have not discussed anything, because I have been told by Dr. Kunal that the students will be the primary audience which we have to focus on, and therefore that talk has been kept in the form of tutorial. I have not discussed any of my research paper or other research papers which we are working on. It was truly instructive type of talk.
Thank you, sir. So we can just conclude that there are any number of techniques related to all the particular domains. Like if we are going for morphology, if we are going for the arrangement of molecules in the, or if you want to just see the performance in terms of efficiency. So there are. So next question is from Mr. Dhyanesh. So why it is still not economical to use solar generation for home application?
Basically, there are two main reasons. One is the cost related to the installation of the battery for storage of the charge, and second one is the cost related to the inverters. So these two things makes the solar like little bit what I can say compared, not that less price, but I think it is because of these two, because batteries have special electrodes and all those things, so it takes And especially when we talk about the electrical appliances which we have to run at home, I don't know like for how much time I will watch TV, for how much time I will run my refrigerator, how much time I will charge my mobile. So basically, I don't know the consumption part of my energy. So if I don't know the consumption part, what I will do, I will just go with the battery, which is having the more storage capacity. Sometimes you may not use, but in case you need, you have to use battery with the higher storage. So if you want to use for 12 hours, 24 hours, 36 hours, that will change the price of the battery. So ultimately the installation price will change. So if you just have to run one light or one tube light fixed arrangement, then I think it is not that expensive, I think.
So again, next question is from Mr. Next question is from Mr. Dhananjay. So he has asked how the aging of solar cell takes place in terms of optical, electrical, and morphological changes.
I think this question is required some detailed answer, I think, and we will not be having that much time, but still I can give you some insight about that. For example, when the aging, we are talking about aging. Aging means it could be aging of particular layer within the device. Suppose if aging is related to photo oxidation of the active material itself, in that situation, I can say that my light absorption properties or the optical properties of the solar cell is getting changed. When I am talking about the degradation of the intermediate layer or the electrodes, which happens, for example, I have not shown here, but in the most common structure on the ITO, people are spin coating PE.PSS. So this PE.PSS is acidic in nature and it basically affects the ITO layer within the PE.PSS. So at that time, there is a, what I can say, degradation of the electrode part or the interfacial part. In that case, my electrical properties will be compromised. So based on which particular layer or which particular part of the solar cell is getting aged or deteriorated, that decides which property will be like deteriorated, whether it will be optical, electrical, and morphological.
Thank you, sir. So I guess yeah, we are done with the questions that are being asked by the participants.
Yeah.
So with this, I thank Dr. Ramakant Sharma for this very interesting and insightful session. Also, I thank him for sparing time and agreeing to be the speaker for covering topic of photovoltaics. It was really like a revision for me of various basic things as my area of expertise also in this field only. And it is my pleasure to share with you all that Dr. Ramakant Sharma was a kind of mentor to me while I was doing my PhD. So with this, I again thank Dr. Ramakant Sharma for his contribution to this short-term course. And with this, I close this session. The attendance link for the session, this session will be active for next 5 minutes. And after that, those who have missed to mark their attendance, that link will be shared for the earlier session.
Yes, thank you,
Thank you,
Dr.
sir.
Kunal, for nice words. Yeah. It was pleasure talking to all the students, and anyone who is interested in knowing more information, don't feel like I have given only 3 hours. They can always contact me anytime. My details are available on various social networking sites. Right nowadays, actually, I am using more of only Twitter and like WhatsApp. So I cannot share the WhatsApp part, but Twitter is still available. You can always share the Twitter on LinkedIn. Other things I'm not using nowadays. So feel free, and I think somebody is asking some email ID. So yeah, I will just write down.
Sure, sir.
Yeah. And beside this, like there are, I heard from the Kunal, like there are some master students available. Some students are doing masters, some students are doing undergraduate studies there. So those who want to pursue higher studies, I think Korea is very good in terms of research, especially in terms of this technological part. There is one very bad thing and good thing about Korea is like they didn't have any of the Nobel Prize till now. But the best part is they have all the best technologies available in the world because they are the technology oriented people. They are not fundamental research type of people. So if some person who is interested in doing PhD, I will tell them that there are so many universities are available in Korea. Only problem will be somewhere related to the language, but the work wise and the atmosphere wise, the labs are very good. They are very, very state of the art, and the facilities will be not a issue when you are doing research in this particular case. So if somebody is interested after like masters and the undergraduate want to do some kind of like higher education, particularly PhD, feel free to let me know. In that situation, I can talk to my professor, and if some positions are available, they can come here and they can do their PhD. So, and for the PhD students, if at all they are working on different areas and still want to have the exchange of word, feel free to drop a email or drop a message on LinkedIn or Twitter, and I will try to get back to you, and like we can share any of your ideas or work. So thank you everyone.
Thank you, sir. Have a nice day.
Yeah, bye.
Thanks. Yeah, so till now we are done with the two sessions. Those are dedicated to photovoltaics. Tomorrow's both sessions will be dedicated for energy storage applications and obviously emerging materials, properties, applications, and characterizations. That is the sole theme of our short-term course. So with this, if you are done with the, yes, please share the PPT of this session. Okay, I'll ask Dr. Ramakant Sharma to please share the PPT so that I will circulate it among all the participants. So we will meet tomorrow at 10:55 sharp AM, obviously.